Thank you, Jaroslav. Thank you for the department. Thank you for inviting me for this opportunity to speak here. It's actually, a week ago I didn't know any of you. Now I know a few of you. But as you will see, this is actually kind of an honor for me and a special moment for me, because the journey that you are going on is actually quite similar to the journey I've been on and the journey I am on, right? So I want to say a few words to you, especially you as new students of these programs, but also to your parents, to the staff, to industry participants who are here. Before I get into the meat of it, I'd like to say a special thing about industry and university collaboration, because I think it's very important. So I spent about 10 years in academia, and then I spent about 15 years or so in industry. And I believe that on both sides of that line, if you will, I was working between university and between industry. And I think it's very important. I know some of you are here as industry representatives, and I know some of you have even sort of sponsored the programs, sponsored some students, and I think it's hugely important. I also think it's a way for you to get a head start on this talent, because in 4 years from now, these students will be out there, and you will be fighting with your competitors, the other vendors and companies who wants to hire them. So here's your opportunity to engage with them, starting already now through projects and summer internships and so forth. Right? Engage with these students now, get to know them, let them get to know you as companies, and so also, of course, make sure you sponsor the program as a whole and next year's students and so forth. That is your opportunity to invest in the program and reap the long-term returns, because these people will be your architects, your programmers, your team leaders 5 years from now. So that's your opportunity. So, but with that said, I wanted to spend most of my time talking to you. There we go. As students. I believe this is your new home. And you're probably going to spend quite a lot of time here, studying more, being frustrated because it's hard, having a lot of fun. So think of this, and you're going to be here for a number of years. This is an opportunity that doesn't come that often. And before I get into, I have 3 things to say to you, sort of 3 kind of things to think about going forward. But before I do, I actually want to tell you a little bit about how I started. So exactly 25 years ago, it's a long time ago, I was where you are now. Well, not exactly in the same physical space. I was actually at this place, which is the Computer Science Department or Information Technology Department in Uppsala in Sweden, which is where I started a 4-year program in 1990. Exactly, it's a very similar program to what you are embarking on. Here I was. I know the bar for getting into this program was quite high. You had good grades, all of you. When I started here, I didn't have as good grades. I actually barely got in. I actually was the last open position. I spent two days in another school in another city. And then they called me after 2 days and said, you have a spot. And I left for this 4-year education because there was a more solid computer science education. Once in, I did well and so forth, and I even went on to get a PhD and so forth in computer science. But it is a serious undertaking, and I've been on it in a similar way as you are getting on it now. I want to talk a little bit about foundations. I think foundations matters to computer science. You can jump on the latest programming language trend. You can go for a 2-week education or a crash course or something like that. But I think foundations matter. If you're going to have an education that lasts you 10, 15, 20 years, foundations truly matter. And that's because the industry and the technology is changing very quickly. Databases, programming languages, development tools, platforms, they change very quickly. And if you just know a specific one, the new one is going to be as hard to learn. But if you have foundations, if you know how these tools and these programming languages are constructed, the next one you learn is going to be much easier. So that I know you have in your curriculum, especially the first 2 years, a lot of math, quite a lot of theory, programming fundamentals. This is what, when I say foundations, that's what I mean. And it might, for some of you, you will breeze through the math, it will be simple. For some of you, it will struggle. But don't give up on the foundations, because they really matter for the long term. That allows you to have a career 10, 20, 30 years from now, because foundations don't change as quickly as the technology does. And I want to give you an example. So I think this is you can't read this, and that's not the intention. This is a 50-year span of programming languages. It goes from 1950s only up till 2001, 2002. After that, I think they stopped trying to keep track of programming languages. I believe you are going to start programming in Python, which was invented about 8, 10 years ago or so. And that's a good choice. But there was many programming languages before that. My first programming language was something called Lisp, or Common Lisp. How many of you have heard of Common Lisp or Lisp? Oh, great, I'm not alone. So this is, yeah. So it's a very different programming language from Python. It was invented 45 or so years earlier than Python. So this was invented in the late 1950s. We actually did have computers then, barely. It had a very weird syntax, by the way, but it was one of the first functional programming languages. This was the first textbook I had. And it was not just a textbook in Lisp, it was actually a textbook in fundamental programming languages. And this book was 12 years old when I started reading it in 1990. But so it was written in 1978, which for you is like prehistoric, right? This is your dad's grandma's time, or something like that. So it was an old book already then when I started reading it. And by now it's of course even older. But so I was curious. I looked up today just to see if people are still using this book. And I found that on Amazon, it has 4 5-star reviews. And the last review of this book is from 2008, which is 30 years after the book was written. So it just tells you something, that some things, some fundamentals of programming languages, for example, they don't come and go with the syntax of programming languages. They remain, right, solid. And they will, so if you learn something now, 30 years later, you can still leverage that. I bet you, once you become experts on Python, we can have a conversation about some characteristics of Python, such as static versus dynamic binding. We can talk about data structures, lists versus trees, and recursion versus iteration, and so forth. We can have these conversations. And I might think about Lisp as a syntax, and you will think about Python as a syntax. So appearance is one thing, fundamental is another thing. So foundations matter, and what I just said about programming languages holds for databases, development platforms, development tools, applications, and a wide range of technology, networking, and so forth. The second thing I want to talk about is about thinking global and being global. The thing with IT is that it's a fast-moving space, but it's also a very global space. It's not a thing that you can just live in isolation. The technology, the products, the talent, people like yourself, they are spread globally. So if something happens in the US or something happens in China, it happens here as well. And this is something to sort of think about and plan for. So put that in your mind. And by the way, this is kind of the wrong symbolism, right? Because taking out your brain is not what I'm suggesting you should do. I'm just saying that think globally, engage globally, engage in online communities I saw, for example, we have some special interest groups, I think, around robotics and natural language processing and so forth. If you're interested in those things, there's plenty of communities of people internationally, of course, with lots of knowledge, lots of people, lots of networks you can build. So also when you have guest professors or speakers coming in from abroad, engage with them, build your networks, get on LinkedIn, and so forth. It's important, right? And it's important to be kind of thinking global and being global when you're in IT. And the third and last thing I want to talk about is a little bit about careers and so forth. Maybe you have something in mind. Maybe you know you're going to be programming web applications or mobile apps or work with natural language processing or cognitive computing, as we call it in IBM. Maybe you have a great idea about what you're going to do, software architect, or maybe you're going to be a technical seller or whatever. You don't know these things yet. I would posit you don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. I've personally been a researcher. I've been a programmer, a developer. I've been a technical seller for many years. Fantastic job, by the way. I've been a product manager for a decade. I've been dabbling a bit with consultancy and so forth. And all these things I were able to do because I had a foundational education that helped me move between roles and new technologies and so forth. So that's one type of career you can have. You can be the jack of all trades. You can switch between roles and companies and countries and so forth. Or you can choose to be an expert. You can spend, 10 years in databases or mobile technology or whatever you want to do. And you can be an expert in that. In both cases, you have chosen a good education to do so. I want to give you one little example to leave you with. When I went through this education where you are now, mobile, right, cell phones, mobile phones, the term was there, we had mobile phones, but they were not kind of used for what we use mobile phones for now. Then, at that time, of course, and this shows how old I am, at that time we actually used them to make phone calls. You dialed a number, and there was like this kind of ringtone, and then hopefully someone picked up, and you actually had a voice conversation. I don't know if you've experienced this, but you're actually calling someone, talking to them in real time, right? Now we don't do that with mobile phones very much, at least, right? They still have the functionality for a couple of years more or something like that. Predominantly, what we use mobile phones for today is, of course, online shopping, right? We use them for Facebook and Twitter. We follow people, we retweet people, we like people's posts, right? We recommend stuff. We engage in our networks. We're building as I say in the United States, we're building our personal brands, right? For our mobile technology and our mobile phones. It's very different. And the cool thing is this, 10 years from now, we're going to have new behaviors that we don't have today. We're going to have new technology, and you guys will be part of developing that technology and allowing sort of society and our world to actually do new things. And that is the cool thing about being in such a fast-moving space as IT. So I just want to leave you with those three things. Even if it's hard sometimes, don't forget the foundations. The fundamentals you're learning, especially the first year or two, might be tough. Never give up. Never give up on those. Help each other get through it, because it helps you in courses years 2 and 3, and it helps you have a long-term career. Secondarily, think global, engage globally. Get into the online communities, learn English really well, engage globally, engage with people who come here, because it's really important to have that in mind. Even if you end up having a career just here, that's great. You will still be having a global interaction with people from all over. And third, you don't know yet exactly what role you're going to have. And that is a good thing. There's lots of different variations, lots of different cool things to do in IT today. So embrace that and prepare for that. Even today, if a course might not be exactly what you think you're going to be using it for the next year, it still might help you in 5-6 years from now when you're changing your career or changing country or changing technology. So it is a great thing to be preparing for change. So that's what I want to say. I just want to say thank you. And in many ways, I envy you. And I told Jaroslav yesterday, I envy him being able to building a new thing, because I like building things. Building something new, whether that's a product or a department or something, is really a lot of fun. And I envy you as students for starting on a journey which you don't know exactly where it will end yet. So thank you very much for the opportunity for coming here, and ever onwards, as people say.